What a treat it is to be here. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
This is so fantastic. My name is Ben Greene. I use he, him pronouns. I am a transgender man, proudly. I transitioned 10 years ago at 15 years old in small-town Connecticut in a time and a place where transgender was not a word anyone was using. I came out and the people around me were kind and they were safe, but they didn't know what that meant. And so what that meant was that I had to build my own support systems as I realized I needed them. I was teaching our health classes, writing our school policy, training our guidance staff. I was jumping out of a plane with a tarp and a sewing kit. As a transgender adult, I have committed my career and my life to being the parachute factory, getting to work to help families, schools, congregations, corporations, anyone learn how to build those supportive structures and systems so that people who come after me, especially the kids who come after me, don't have to be well-spoken, don't have to be patient, don't have to be brave. They can be kids. Everybody deserves to be supported as they are by default. And I'm really excited to be here with you all today, talking a little bit more about that and about my story. Now, before I get into my story, I want to share just a little bit about what it actually means to be transgender, because I want to make sure we all have the language to be a part of this conversation. It's never too late to start your learning journey. I like to imagine that when everyone is born, they're born sitting into a chair. And it's generally either going to be a firm, tall stool and a soft, squishy armchair. And this chair represents the body that you're born into and the category that you're put into, either male or female. Now, we've all sat down before, right? And when you first sit down, you feel the chair you're sitting in, how comfortable it is. But if it's comfortable, you kind of stop feeling it. Most people don't feel their chair. They don't notice it's there. They're comfortable to sit in that chair for all of time. They identify as what's called cisgender, or having a gender identity that is the same as your sex assigned at birth. Now, we've all sat in a chair that's uncomfortable, right? And whatever the reason, it's too short, it's too tall, something's poking you, it can be really distracting. The longer you go sitting in a chair that just doesn't feel right, the more it can become downright painful. So this feeling of discomfort or distress when your gender identity doesn't match your sex assigned at birth is what's called gender dysphoria, and it can be really challenging to deal with. We also use the term gender euphoria to talk about the joy and comfort when our body does align with our identity, when we feel seen as we are by ourselves and others. Now, if someone's uncomfortable in the chair they're sitting in, easiest solution? Just get up and move. Find a more comfortable chair. This refers to someone who is transgender, or someone whose gender identity is different than the sex they were assigned at birth. Now, maybe somebody says, I don't know, neither chair really looks comfortable to me. I'd rather a chair that's a little softer than a stool, but a little taller than an armchair. Maybe one type of chair one day and a different type of chair a different day. Maybe someone says, I just don't get it. No matter what chair I sit in, I'm uncomfortable. I'd rather just stand up. People can identify as gender fluid, agender, and a whole host of other identities that fall under this umbrella term non-binary, which just means not one of the two binary identities. And I have a lot of people say to me, Ben, I don't understand. How am I supposed to keep track of all the different letters in the acronym? And I used to give an answer about how we could do our research and stay up to date, but there's actually a skill that we all already have. I think a lot about my wife, Samantha Levine, who is a medical student who I am obsessed with, and I love her. She wants to be an OBGYN, and so she goes to the hospital and will do 14 hours of surgery, and she comes home and I say, hey, how was your day? And then she opens her mouth and I don't understand any of the words that come next. I have no idea what she's talking about, but I love her. So I ask questions. I say, tell me more. What does that mean? Is that a big deal? Is that good? Is that bad? Does that hurt a lot? And all of a sudden I'm surprised by how much I learn. Now, she doesn't need me to be a medical student. She doesn't need me to help her with the surgery. I would have to keep my eyes closed, and that wouldn't go well for anybody. What she needs from me is curiosity, excitement, and respect. That's the energy I want us to bring to our LGBTQ plus loved ones with identities that might not make the most sense to us right away. We have lots of friends, family members with hobbies or jobs that don't make a whole lot of sense, but we engage because we care. Understanding can come on day 5, on day 10, on day 100, as long as love and respect come on day 1. So I want us to carry that with us as we go into the rest of our conversation. And I want to start by sharing a little bit more about my faith journey, because my journey into my Judaism and into really deepening my Judaism and my journey into my trans identity have been very closely linked for myself. Now, I was raised Reformed Jewish, and I spent a lot of my early transitioning wondering how it could have happened, that God made me wrong, that God put me in the wrong body. And people often ask me, God doesn't make mistakes, I don't understand. but I heard a quote a few years ago that sticks with me very closely, which is, God made me transgender for the same reason he made grapes instead of wine and wheat instead of bread, so that humanity could share in the divine magic of creation. Yeah. To have created myself is the most spiritual, divine thing I ever could have done. Coming home to my body has felt magical. I have found so much love in my faith through my transition, through discovering who I am. Now, that doesn't mean it was all easy. I came out in a time when, people didn't really know what it meant to be transgender, and I was often pretty nervous to come out. And I remember a challenge I experienced coming out to my confirmation class. I was in 11th grade at the time, and there were about 10 of us that would come together every Tuesday night to talk about Torah and get ready for the confirmation ceremony. And I was really nervous to come out to them, and I said, all right, hey everybody, I'm going to be going by Ben now, and he, him pronouns. And they looked at me and they said, are you serious? Are you kidding? This room has 10 people in it, and half of them are already named Ben. You couldn't have picked a more unique name? Come on, man. The reality is, the love that my synagogue met me with, having not a whole lot of idea what that meant, cemented my identity as a Jew. Seeing the ways they said, let's make sure we have a gender-neutral bathroom. Let's make sure all the staff knows how to show up for you. That was the only problem I ever had from those guys in my confirmation class. They were awesome from that moment onwards, as long as they were okay with me being known as Benjamin Greene, full name. We had run out of all the other options. Benji, Ben, Benjamin, they were all taken. Besides that, they showed up for me. And that was so amazing and so impactful for me. Coming out is always really scary, though. When I was first coming out, I actually didn't tell anybody for almost a year. Not because anybody ever told me that I couldn't come out, but because nobody ever told me that I could. When I looked out to the world around me for evidence, all I saw was bills saying I was a dishonest cheater or a dangerous burden. People saying I was broken or there was something wrong with me or something evil. It was terrifying. I asked the world, do you want me to be transgender? And the world said back, no. Nobody in my family ever said that I couldn't come out. But because I didn't know for sure, I couldn't afford to guess wrong. And so I waited. Eventually, I realized that a life that wasn't authentic to me wasn't worth living, and I needed to come out, and that was my only option. And I'm really fortunate that I received a lot of that love. But I bring that mentality with me often, seeing the people around me coming into workplaces and congregations, asking myself, what does it mean when I can't afford to guess wrong? Half a decade after I first came out to my confirmation class, I came to CBI for the first time. And this was a place, like many others, I'm fortunate to call parts of my home and my community, where I didn't have to guess. I saw pride flags. I heard about the outstanding Pride Shabbat. I nervously shared the work that I do, which is an LGBTQ advocate, and was met with enthusiasm and excitement. Oh my gosh, have you met this person? Have you been here? This is amazing. The love that I immediately found in this community. The people in this congregation who immediately welcomed me home and became a part of a family to me has been just so amazing. The ways that CBI has shown up for the LGBTQ plus community, for me, has celebrated my marriage, the launch of my book, just me as a person. It has been so amazing to be here. There was one other moment for me that really cemented even further my identity as a Jew, and that being inherently linked to my trans identity. And that was about a year ago in the capital city of Missouri, Jefferson City, which is a terrible place to be. It's really just awful. They don't call it misery for nothing. Nobody tell my home rabbi I said that. I was going for the first time to testify against a piece of terrifying anti-LGBTQ legislation, and I was petrified. And it was a 3-hour car ride, and the hearing was at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so I drove to the Capitol with a rabbi, a pastor, and an 11-year-old. Sounds like a setup to a very weird punchline. But we sent the car ride laughing, joking, telling stories, and listening to music, almost forgetting what we were on our way to do. And then we got off the highway, and you could see the spires of the Capitol building in the distance. And the ice that ran through the car was chilling. The rabbi turned on the radio and he said, okay, who here has been to the Capitol before? And about half of us raised our hands. And he said, it's important to me that you know what to expect. The walls that you have, I need you to build them as high as you can. The things people are going to say in there are going to be cruel. They may not listen to you. They may not respect you. You have to know who you are. And so we parked, we tightened up our ties, and in somber silence walked up the steps of the Capitol building. We're going upstairs, and I am shaking now. I had been watching self-defense videos on YouTube the night before. You could tell how well that would have gone for me. I'm not really fighty. But I was terrified. And we came up the elevator, the second floor, and the elevator opens to the unmistakable noise of a crowd. And I am freaking out. I am ready for people who are really just not excited to see me there. Protesters, hateful people, and we round the corner, and it looks like a unicorn threw up on the hallway. The rainbows going up and down the hall were miraculous. And it wasn't just that people were there in their pride gear. We rounded the corner, and the welcoming committee ran up to us and said, "Okay, has everybody eaten? Is everyone okay? Do you need a bathroom break? Do you need a gas card? We have our social workers in this office today if anyone needs support." The love that existed in that hallway. When I waited in that hallway for 3 or 4 hours until it was my turn to testify, there was something else I noticed. Not just rainbows, not just smiles and hugs, kippot everywhere, which is not something you see a whole lot in Missouri, but in the halls of Jefferson City, Missouri, they were lining the walls. About 200 people showed up in the Capitol to testify in support of the LGBTQ plus community, and at least 50 of them were wearing kippot, were faith leaders, clergy members, congregants, people who cared, people who were actively studying to convert in the hallways. The love that the faith community brought to that space. And I talked to my rabbi, who has now become a very close friend of mine, and I said, "Why do you come? You're here every single week. They know you here, they recognize you here." And he said, "My faith demands of me that I show up. My faith demands of me that I love my neighbor, that I take care of everyone, that I see everyone as perfect and worthy, that I take care of my own transgender child." And every person that I talked to said the same thing. "I am here because my Judaism demands of me that I care, that I stand with you." And that cemented further for me a very important realization. There was a time where I used to try to quote passages at people. Well, this line says you should be affirming. The reality is there are lines in any religious text that tell you that it's not okay to be LGBTQ, but there are lines that tell you that it is amazing, that it is beautiful. In life, I'm of the philosophy that you can find evidence of anything that you're looking for. So you can look to religion, and if you want to find a sword, you can find a sword. But if you want to find a shield, if you want to find an excuse to be loving, to be passionate, to be a defender, to be an ally, you can find that too. You all have a choice to make. I can't make that for you, but I urge you, look to your faith and find the shield. Now, what does that actually mean? How do you find the shield? How do you sign up? How do you show up for your LGBTQ plus loved ones during Pride Month and all year round? There are a couple of things that I ask of you, hopefully just 2 challenges to start. Knowledge and action. Knowledge. Find ways to keep learning about people that are different from you, about stories that are different from your own, whether that's watching a movie that features a transgender character or reading a book about LGBTQ plus history. Find ways to expand the stories you hear and the things that you're learning, and be curious. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to get something wrong. Have conversations with people who are different from you. And action. Don't be afraid to stand up when someone says something that is unkind, that is homophobic, that is transphobic. It doesn't have to be, "Hey, that's uncomfortable. That's homophobic. You can't say that." We don't have to yell at people. We can say, "I don't think I understand why that's funny. Could you explain the punchline to me?" It could be, "Hey, I'm sure there was a time where that was an okay thing to say, but that's actually really hurtful. I learned that recently. Would you like to talk more about that? This seems like an issue you're not very familiar with. Would you like to talk more? Would you like to practice using they, them pronouns for our family member so we can show up for them better?" And I have folks come to me at this point and say, "Well, Ben, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I don't want to make anybody feel upset or like I'm angry at them, or I don't want to say, people don't want me to be around." The reality is, if you're trying to be my ally and the stones thrown at me aren't hitting you, you aren't standing close enough. At some point, allyship, meaningful, deep allyship, isn't going to make you popular. There are people who would very much like to exclude me, and they're going to be uncomfortable when you include me, and that's okay. You get to decide where to draw that line for yourself. Again, you get to decide whether to pick up the sword or the shield, but I urge you, draw that line. Pick up the shield. Now, there's one more story I want to tell just to close us out about why I do this work, why it's so important for me to be so open and honest about my story and my identity and the experiences that I've had. When I was coming out, there were not other transgender people around me. Not on TV, not on the news, certainly not in my small town in Connecticut, which meant that I had no idea it was possible for a transgender person to grow up. I had literally never seen it before. I assumed that maybe I would go to college and then I would just disappear because I didn't know it was possible. And then, the summer after my freshman year, I saw a real-life trans actor playing a trans character who had a happy ending. And my mind was blown. I didn't know we could get those. And so I spent the whole show sitting in my seat, planning out everything I was going to say to him after the show. I was going to say, I've never seen someone like myself represented on a stage before. It gives me so much hope for myself and for my future as a transgender man. Thank you. We'd take a picture, he'd sign my playbill, it would be great. I had it all planned out. And we came into this lobby room after I opened my mouth to give my spiel. I take one look at him and I burst into tears. I could not get a word out. He sees me from across the room. He walks through the whole crowd, comes right up to me and just pulls me in. And we stand there crying in each other's arms, not saying a word, but understanding everything we needed to know about each other. And after 2 or 3 minutes, he stepped back and he said, "This is it. This is why representation matters." And he told me the story of how he had the exact same thing happen to him 20 years before, the first time he saw a transgender person on stage. And in that moment, I said, okay, that's it for me. Everything I'm going to do from this moment onwards, the purpose of my life is to be that for as many people as possible. Being the reason somebody gets to look at me and say, oh, I can be trans and grow up and find love and find success and find joy. And I've committed my life to being that. But I've realized pretty recently I'm not going to be able to build that world on my own. I got to tell that story at a high school recently in small town Massachusetts at an assembly of all 800 students. And I told the story, and then the bell rang to send the kids off to their buses. And I came down off the stage and started packing up my bag. And when I turned around to leave, there was a line of 40 kids waiting for a hug. My first thought was, wow, I can't believe that I get to be that for these kids. How lucky am I that this is my life? My second thought was much more humbling. This moment isn't thanks to me. The fact that they had the knowledge to identify with my story, the safety to be seen asking for that hug, the fact that their community decided to invite me to come to their school, that moment wasn't built by me. That moment was built by their parents, their teachers, their doctors, their community members, their congregants, all the people around them, putting their arms around them and saying, I want to see you grow up. I want to see you thriving and successful and above all else, joyful, whoever you are. I want to see you grow up. There are a lot of reasons to be scared right now. I often look out at the world and feel angry and feel depressed and feel exhausted, but the one thing I never feel is hopeless, because I get to travel to every corner of this country, to huge congregations and to congregations of 5 people, to bright blue states and dark red states, to webinars in Russia with parents joining under pseudonyms so they don't get caught supporting their trans kids. Every inch of this planet is full of people who are ready to pick up the shield. You all, the fact that you are here with pride for yourselves, for your family members, for your community members, for your loved ones, this is how I know, not for a hope, not for a dream, but for a fact, that we will build that world where everybody gets to be loved as they are by default. Thank you all so much for having me. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much.